The National Institutes of Health taking in hundreds of millions of dollars from drug makers, according to a watchdog group. Is there a conflict of interest? We'll talk about it coming up on Business Matters. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining me here today. I'm your host, Don Ma. And let's start with markets today. U.S. stocks ended mostly flat, and this is following softer than expected labor market data. In fact, the data was the latest in a string of recent reports that pointed to cooling U.S. economic growth. So S&P 500 here, ending around 7 points up, or about 0.1%. NASDAQ, 28 points, also around 0.1%, and the Dow rising 140 points, up 0.3% here. So weaker data supported actually a Fed rate cut this year, and market expectations now going up for a September rate reduction, now standing around 65% versus around below 50% last week. Okay, so let's talk about the job numbers that are out today. Openings shrank for the second month in a row and have fallen, to a 3-year low actually. So there were just over 8 million available jobs posted in April. And this is according to the latest data from the Department of Labor. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics found in April there was an estimated 1.2 available jobs for every job seeker. By the way, that is the lowest ratio in 3 years. Layoffs are at the lowest level as well since December 2022, while total quit rates and new hires both moved up slightly. Speaking of stocks, I want to talk to you about stocks in India. They're plunging over there, so have its prime ministers hoped for a landslide victory. So what's happening here is India's benchmark Sensex index and the broader Nifty 50 index both falling nearly 6%. And this was the worst daily drop since 2020. And it came after record highs for both indexes, actually just 24 hours before this. And experts were predicting a major victory for Prime Minister Modi. He was running on his economic record over the past decade. His party was hoping to win a supermajority in the lower house parliament. But preliminary results are showing an opposition party that is performing better than analysts had expected. So key economic reforms could be at risk if the final results show Modi did, in fact, underperform in the election. All right, let's talk about AI now. A group of insiders at the company OpenAI is sounding the alarm about what they call serious risks posed by this technology. In an open letter, the group of current and former employees is demanding more transparency about the risks of AI. While companies have acknowledged some of these, the group said they should be doing more to educate the public and put protective measures in place. Now, they also want more protections for employees who come forward with concerns about the technology they're building. And the group does not believe AI companies will, in fact, voluntarily share critical information. The law has struggled as well to catch up with the quickly advancing technology. And the group is also saying that many of the risks they are concerned about are not yet regulated. Okay, speaking of laws, a new lawsuit from Utah claiming TikTok's live feature is putting children at risk. So this live feature from TikTok allows users to post live videos to the platform where they can interact with viewers and respond to comments in real time. So only users over the age of 18 can host a live stream, and they actually must meet a certain follower count. But the lawsuit filed by Utah's Attorney General alleges that TikTok Live operates like a, quote, virtual strip club where children may be encouraged by adults to engage in illicit acts on camera in exchange for payments from other users. It claims that TikTok has insufficient age verification and that law enforcement and enforcement measures to ensure the app is being safely used are not adequate. So a TikTok spokesperson released a statement about the lawsuit saying that the platform has, quote, industry-leading policies and measures to help protect the safety and well-being of teens. On the topic of social media, New York is taking on social media giants. It could become the first state to pass a law that would restrict social media platforms from using algorithms to promote content to minors. So according to a source, the bill would require platforms to show content in chronological order by default for young users. So algorithm-generated content feeds would be an opt-in experience instead, and that would require parental consent. And this would apply to apps like, for example, TikTok and Meta's Instagram. And the source added that a separate measure seeks to protect children's privacy. Parents will also be able to set limits on their kids' social media use at certain times of the day. And New York Governor Kathy Hochul and state lawmakers are reportedly nearing a deal on the proposal. State lawmakers could vote on it as soon as this week. Okay, moving on from that, Dr. Anthony Fauci in the hot seat as lawmakers grilled him over the government handling of coronavirus pandemic. Dr. Fauci strongly denied suppressing a theory that COVID-19 originated from a lab leak in China. This is the first time Dr. Fauci is addressing allegations publicly since a closed-door hearing in January. So Fauci, as you know, is the former top U.S. infection disease expert. He retired in December 2022. The House Oversight and Accountability Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic has been set up to find the origins of the virus. Meanwhile, on that topic, a new report says royalty payments from drug companies to the National Institutes of Health and its scientists jumped following the COVID-19 pandemic in 2021. This is according to a new data obtained by a nonprofit government watchdog, Open the Books. And earlier, I actually spoke to Adam Andrzejewski. He's the CEO and founder of this watchdog group. Listen. Adam, thank you very much for your time today. So you were at the hearing yesterday where Fauci was grilled over a wide range of topics. So here's the thing. According to a report by you on the New York Post, NIH scientists got over $700 million in royalties from Big Pharma. Maybe to start off, just tell us, what did you find in your investigation?
So yesterday in that hearing, it was an historic moment. I was in the first row, and Fauci twice had to answer questions from members of Congress on our findings. We were really proud of that. Previously, the previous day at the New York Post, we broke the facts from a 3-year battle at NIH to open the book on their third-party paid royalties. This is when a government scientist in a taxpayer-funded government lab has an innovation, they license it to, say, pharmaceutical companies who pay royalties back to the agency and the scientists. And we found during the pandemic years of 2022 and 2023 that the secret royalty complex went on steroids. As a matter of fact, there was $710 million worth of royalties paid out to NIH scientists just in those 2 years. So I think every single decision, especially from Dr. Anthony Fauci during the pandemic, now has to be questioned. Did Dr. Fauci operate in the special interest of himself, thousands of his scientists who collected hundreds of millions of dollars worth of royalties, or did he operate in the public interest? That's what's at stake.
Okay, and the information that you got in that report, was it difficult? What did you have to do to find that?
So this was a 3-year battle with the National Institutes of Health. NIH has declared war on transparency. They don't want oversight. They certainly act like they're immune from oversight and that it's a virus. However, we filed 2 federal lawsuits over the course of the last 2.5 years with our legal partners at Judicial Watch, and we've been highly successful at opening the books on this secret third-party royalty scheme. Make no mistake, NIH, this is the information they never wanted you to know.
So it was a very long hearing yesterday. I'm wondering if, besides this, any other thing that stood out to you?
Yeah, so in our data, in our report, I think here's a big conflict of interest that needs to be addressed. And NIH and Fauci need to answer these questions. In the top 10 royalty payers, 2 of them are state-owned Chinese pharmaceutical companies, vaccine makers, owned by the Chinese Communist Party back in China. They are paying royalties to Fauci's Institute on the pandemic at the same time when the lab leak theory was receiving aggressive pushback by Fauci and his colleagues. And so did this color their pushback against the lab leak theory? And a lot of other questions need to be answered now that we know who was paying who.
Okay, once again, thank you so much for being on the show today, Adam Andrzejewski. Open the books. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here on NTD and Business Matters, we really try to dig deeper on important issues like this. So earlier, I also talked to Dr. Robert Malone about this conflict of interest potentially between pharmaceutical companies and government agencies. Here's part of what he told me. Let's also talk about Adam Andrzejewski's report that NIH scientists got $710 million in royalties from Drugmakers. Have you seen the article, and what are your thoughts after yesterday's hearing?
I have, and I'm not surprised. And I believe that the date, the timing, the framing of the dates, the bracketing dates for that report does not include the $400 million settlement with Moderna. So when these funds come in, what happens is that they get divided up. In the past, it's always been the case that the lion's share of those funds go to the Institute and to the NIH, probably the director's office. So Mr. Fauci, or Dr. Fauci, asserting that he didn't receive any of these funds himself is in a way true and in another way misleading, because as the head of this agency, this revenue that comes into the NIAID, his division of NIH, will in significant part contribute to a unencumbered fund that's independent of congressional oversight for the agency, which they can use to pretty much do whatever they want, whether it's travel, lodging, improvements in their offices, or they can use the funds as they do, for instance, in the Foundation for CDC, which is another kind of back door that pharma or the Gates Foundation can donate into. And there's one for NIH also. The CDC has used those funds to fund the public-private partnerships group that funds the Shots Heard Around the World group. And so that's an example of how these funds get used. Is it truly does create a slush fund for the agency.
All right, Dr. Malone, my next question and last, I think many people may already have a sense of what the answer is, but I want to hear from you. Why should the American people care that these royalties are going to the agency?
So there's a number of reasons, and it creates obviously a conflict of interest, but it's a unique conflict of interest in the case of federal employees that are involved in making decisions about awarding funding. So we're talking about people both intramural, that are within the NIH structure for research, and extramural, people that are sitting in Rockville or Bethesda in offices making decisions about grants, such as, for instance, the EcoHealth Alliance Award. So this creates a situation in which the government is choosing winners and losers, and government about, fundamentals like technology, fundamentals of science, which hypotheses will be allowed to be investigated and which won't. And those researchers that are involved one way or another in those decisions within the federal government are receiving royalty revenue from pharmaceutical industries, so they have a vested conflict of interest.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Malone, for your insight today. Very well said, comprehensive. Have a great day.
Thank you, sir. Have a
So like I said earlier, that's just part of the interview. I'll put up the full interview to my chat with Dr. Malone, and you can find it on ntd.com. We also talked about topics, for example, instances where Fauci yesterday may have taken a different stance on certain statements that he made during the pandemic, like social distancing and the effectiveness of masks. All right, going to break now. Coming up, big Social Security cuts may be coming within the decade, as much as 25%. Congress holding a hearing on what to do next. And Toyota is getting probed by Japanese authorities as a safety test scandal in Japan widened. We'll tell you more about that and more, so stay tuned after this short break. All right, here's some quick headlines on what else you need to know. President Biden signing an executive order to address the illegal immigration surge, and the order will temporarily pause asylum claims after a daily average of 2,500 illegal immigrant crossings into the United States. And the restriction will stay until the daily average drops to 1,500 for 7 days in a row. A guilty verdict has turned into $141 million for former President Donald Trump. His campaign and the Republican National Committee reports that they have raised double the money in May compared to April. And they say the flood of surging support came following Trump's conviction. E-Trade considering telling meme stock influencer Keith Gill that he can no longer use the platform, and this is coming after growing concerns of potential stock manipulation amid his recent purchases of GameStop, according to Wall Street Journal report. Now let's talk about cars. Japanese authorities commenced an inspection of Toyota facilities, and this is not long after Toyota apologized for lapses in the certification process of some of its vehicles. NTD's Sean Marshall has the details.
Japan's Transport Ministry launched an on-site investigation at Toyota's headquarters on Tuesday after a widening vehicle certification scandal. Japanese authorities said 5 automakers, Toyota, Mazda, Honda, Suzuki, and Yamaha, had submitted incorrect or manipulated safety test data when they applied for certification of the vehicles. The inspection happened shortly after a public apology statement from Akio Toyoda, chairman of Toyota Motor Corporation.
As the person responsible for the Toyota Group, I would like to sincerely apologize to our customers, car enthusiasts, and all stakeholders for the problems that have occurred within the group. I am truly sorry.
He told reporters in Tokyo that the correct certification process had not been followed at Toyota Group companies, which include Daihatsu truck brand Hino and Toyota itself. Production has been suspended for 3 Toyota models in Japan. Toyota, the world's biggest automaker by volume, said its wrongdoing occurred during 6 different tests conducted in 2014, 2015, and 2020. In one example, it had measured collision damage on one side of a model's hood, while it was required to do so on both sides. The company has stated that models built overseas are not affected. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Staying in the automotive industry, a Tesla sales slump has extended into a second month, and this is based on data from China Passenger Car Association. So, in May, sales of China-made Teslas dropped 6% from a year earlier. And the U.S. automakers sold around 72,000 units. Now, for a comparison for you, to Chinese rival BYD, sold 330,000 vehicles in the same month. And those are up 38% year on year. So this slide in Tesla sales, it came after it slashed Model Y production at its Shanghai plant, and the output was cut by a double-digit percentage. So this was in response to weakening demand for its best-selling model in China. Deliveries of China-made Model 3 and Model Y vehicles are up from April, however. Okay, as I mentioned before the break, Social Security benefits may be cut drastically within the decade. Lawmakers are declaring that they should act so retirees can receive full benefits. Here's the story.
They're going to see a 21% cut in their Social Security.
In less than a decade, retirees could have their Social Security benefits cut in a system that's constantly at risk of collapse. The House Social Security Subcommittee tackled the issue Tuesday.
For many, it's the only source of retirement income that they depend on.
Representative Dan Kildee said it's important for Congress to keep the Social Security payments going.
These folks that I represent, and that we all represent, have contributed to Social Security with every paycheck, and rightfully expect that it will be waiting for them when it's time for them to retire. That's sort of the deal.
Currently, all proposed solutions kick the can down the road.
If we increase the taxable share back to 90%, It's around 82.5 now, so made 90% taxable. That would delay exhaustion by 4 years.
Philip Swaggle, director of the Congressional Budget Office, said proposed solutions would make a difference. Solutions such as more taxes, lower payments to retirees, increasing the retirement age, and increasing immigration. But they would only delay the collapse.
If we subjected all earnings in the U.S. to the Social Security payroll tax, we'd still have about a $10 trillion shortfall over the next 75 years.
Representative Drew Ferguson said the solutions could also add to the national debt, which is nearing $35 trillion.
And finally, for our last story today, here's something interesting. Researchers at the University of Maine come up with a new way to address the nation's housing shortage. Take a look at this. Now, this 600 square foot single family home was built with what researchers are saying the world's first largest polymer 3D printer. And this is the first 100% 3D printed home built from local wood fiber and bioresin materials. The university unveiled the 3D printer last month, and the goal is for the printer to build a home in as little as 48 hours. All right, and that's all the stories we have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any feedback for the episode, please feel free to let me know. And don't forget, business matters. Goodbye.